Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to this bonus lesson. So I have a question from a student and let me just show it to you what this is. So Michael messaged me and said that, hey, I've recently purchased your course. Thanks for this fantastic course. And the question is, how can I make this onboarding screen only appear on the first load of the application? Okay, I've looked everywhere online, but I'm struggling to get it working with the app delegate. Could you give me some help in this or point me in the right direction? All right, Michael, thanks for asking this question. And I think that this is a very legitimate question. It's a very real question that some students might have. So in this video, I'd like to show you how we can implement this. So the whole idea is that, with most apps, you only want to show the onboarding screen once. And then if the user comes back to the app again, you don't want to show the onboarding screen again. All right. So we're going to do that in this video. All right. So I'm going to use this onboarding fashion app as an example over here. So as you can see now, if I come under this, my Git history, we are currently right now on the lesson 8, which is the completed version of this app. Okay, so basically I'm just going to add on top of what we have done on this project itself. Okay, so as you can see right now, when I run this, let me just refresh our memory here first. We are loading the onboarding screen directly. So what we need to do is to find out whether the user has already seen this screen or not. All right, so if the user has seen this screen already, we want to transit the user to the main part of the app, which is this one over here. Okay, so the way we're going to implement this is to create a loading view controller to check whether the user has seen the onboarding screen. All right, so let's do that right now. So I'm going to come over to the main.storyboard and let's just bring in a new view controller. So view controller, and let's drag this into the storyboard. Okay, so for this time, I want to make this the initial view controller instead. So let's click on this, and then I'm going to set this as the initial view controller. And then also I want to create a file over here to just connect to the view. So let's select a Swift file, and then let's call this a loading view controller. Okay, so let's create the file, and then let's import UIKit. So let's create the class over here, class loading view controller. Okay, so this will conform to UI view controller, and then of course we have the view did load. So this is pretty standard stuff that we're going to type it in, and then I'm going to create a variable over here. So let's call this private let is onboarding scene. Okay, so I'm going to create some kind of local flag over here. So in the meantime, I'm going to set this to be false. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create the implementation over here. So maybe let's call this show initial screen. Okay, let this be a private function as well. Okay, so what is the logic here first? So let's get the high level understanding. Okay, so we're going to say if is onboarding scene, we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're going to perform another set of action. Okay, so if onboarding is seen, we want to go straight to main app. Otherwise, show the onboarding screen, all right, or rather the onboarding view controller. Okay, so this is what we need to do. So let's come back to the main.storyboard and let's just connect this file first. Okay, so let's come over here and then let's call this a loading view controller. Let's hit the enter button to connect that. Okay, so guys, now I need to know how can I transit from this screen to this main app view controller over here. And if you look with me over here in the onboarding view controller, if you scroll down all the way, we have the implementation over here, which is under the did tab explore button. Okay, so over here we initialize the main app view controller via the storyboard, and then we set that as the window.root view controller. Okay, so maybe what I'd like to do is to maybe just create a private function over here. So maybe let's call this show main app. Okay, and I want to just copy this entire thing inside this function. So let's just cut this in and paste this in. Okay, and I just want to call the show main app over here. Okay, so for the meantime, let's do this. I believe this should still work. Okay, so what I'd like to do right now is that I want to maybe just extract this. Okay, why is it complaining? Declaration is, maybe let me do a command B to see if this is working. No, it's not. Oh, why is it complaining? Oh, I think I missed out an additional bracket. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So I need to put in another bracket over here. Okay, so I think let's do a command B. I believe this should work right now. Okay, so I think I'm also going to highlight everything and do a Control I to just indent this correctly. Okay guys, so for the onboarding screen to transit to the main app view controller, this is the way I'm going to do that. All right, so for the loading screen to transit into the onboarding screen, I can also use the same implementation. All right, so I'm just going to copy this entire thing. Okay, just copy this and just come back to the loading view controller, and let's create two functions at the bottom over here. Okay, so private func show onboarding screen. Okay, and then let's call another one called show main app. Okay, something like that. And then I'm just going to paste this over here. Okay, whatever that I've copied from the onboarding view controller. All right, so let me just indent this correctly. Okay, so let's do it right now. So I'm going to duplicate this again, but subsequently I'll refactor this. So let me just show you how this works first. Okay, so the onboarding screen, we need to create the identifier. Okay, so let's come to the main.storyboard. And under the onboarding view controller, let's open this right panel over here. And then notice that we don't have a storyboard ID. Okay, so we want to set the storyboard ID. So the simple thing I'll do is to just copy this and just paste this inside over here and hit the enter button. Okay, so let's come back over here, and then I'm going to paste this over here. All right, so onboarding view controller. Okay, so of course this will not be called main app. This will be called the onboarding view controller. Okay, so now with this two implementation that's being set, okay, oops, I forgot to update this one as well. Okay, with these two functions being set, I can just call this inside over here. So let's call this show main app, otherwise show onboarding screen. Okay, so let's just confirm that this is working. Okay, because this is really high level logic. So currently I'm setting this flag manually as false. Okay, so what's going to happen is that if I set this to be false, onboarding is not yet seen, which means when I run this code, it's going to bring me to the onboarding screen. Okay, but notice that we have not yet called the show initial screen yet. So let's do view did appear. So we can only call this in this function instead of the view did load. Okay, and I believe it's because during the view did load, we have not constructed the storyboard yet. Okay, so let's do this under the view did appear. So view did appear animated. Let's pass in this, and then let's call show initial screen. Okay, let me just remove all these blank spaces. All right, guys. So let me just quickly run this, and I should be transited to the onboarding screen. Okay, so let me just quickly run this. All right, am I saying anything? It looks like I'm not. Let me just put a breakpoint over here. View did appear. Okay, it looks like we have a problem here. What's the problem? Oh, sorry guys, I made a mistake. The reason is we have to call super.view did appear. All right, so let me just quickly run this one more time. All right, guys, so as you can see right now, we are on the onboarding screen. But if let's say we set this to be true, then I will be transited to the main part of the app. All right, so notice that this is working. Okay, so guys, we want to be able to maybe just refactor this, because you notice that this is repeated code, and the last thing we want in our app is really repeated code. Okay, so I'm going to create some kind of navigation manager. All right, so let's come over to the onboarding fashion app, and let's create a new group over here. Let's call this service. Okay, and then let's come over to the new file, and maybe let's call this navigation manager. Okay, I think presenter manager, navigation manager, it doesn't really matter. Basically, the whole idea is to transit the user from a screen to another screen. Okay, so maybe let's create a class over here. Okay, let's call this a navigation manager, and then I'm going to create an enum over here. So let's call this screen. So there are two screens that we can go to. We can either go to the onboarding screen, or we can go to the main app itself. Okay, let's call this main app. Okay, so let's create a function over here called show. So maybe let me make this a bit bigger, and then when the user call the show function, we can allow him to choose which screen that he wants to go to. All right, so we pass in the user has to select one of these cases over here. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the loading view controller, and I'm going to copy the entire thing over here. All right, so let's just copy this, and then I'm just going to paste this inside over here. Okay, so of course, depending on which screen he decides, we have to instantiate the correct view controller to be set as the root view controller. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like switch screen. Okay, so there will be two cases, either the main app or the onboarding the onboarding screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. Okay, so notice that this is complaining. There is no such we cannot look at this. Okay, unresolved identifier. The reason is because we have not yet import UI kit. So let's do that right now. Okay, and then I'm going to create a view controller over here. So var view controller, this will be of type view controller. Okay, I'm going to end it with a exclamation mark. Okay, that means that we will have to unwrap this within this switch statement. Okay, so I'm going to copy this over here, cut this. Sorry, not copy but cut, and let me just paste this over here. Okay, so I'm going to, instead of initializing this, I'm going to say, hey, this view controller, which is this guy at the top over here, I want to assign him to be this main app view controller. Okay, so similarly, I'm going to copy this and just paste this inside over here. And if this is onboarding, then I want this to be the onboarding view controller. All right, so I hope that this is easy to understand. Okay, so what's next? If let's see, blah blah blah, view. Okay, it looks like okay, so when we show this, when we call the show function, I think because we need to have access to this view as well, so maybe what I would like to do is to just pass in the view controller over here as well. So maybe let's call this maybe in controller. So let's pass in UI view controller. Alright, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to do in controller dot view, okay, because we have to get this view from somewhere, so we're just going to pass in wherever the view controller is calling from. Okay, so again, we have a problem over here because this is going to be dynamic now, so I'm just going to copy this and just paste this inside over here. Okay, alright. Okay guys, so this is the way I would do this. I'll do the transition to basically just avoid any kind of code duplication. Alright, so with this navigation setup, I'm going to come back to my loading view controller. Where is that? Which is this guy over here. And then now, instead of having these two functions over here, I'd like to maybe just delete this. Okay, I know it's a bit drastic, but trust me, this will work. And then we want to create the navigation manager at the top over here. All right, so let's do private let navigation manager. Okay, so this will be a navigation manager. Let's initialize this, and then we were going to call it this way. Okay, so we need to go straight to the main app. So let's do navigation manager dot. So we have a show, and then let's do a dot as well, so we can decide which one we want to go to. Since we need to go to the main app, so let's select the first one. And then in controller, okay, so we have to pass in our controller, which is this loading view controller. So we can just pass in self over here. Okay, alright, so and then I think I can just remove this show main app function. And then similarly at the bottom, showing the onboarding screen, we can do navigation manager dot show. Okay, we need this to be a small n instead. Dot show. Okay, we can just do a dot over here and select the onboarding. Okay, and in controller, let's just pass in self as well. And also we can remove this show onboarding screen function. All right, so I think we can just remove the comments because this should be easy to understand right now. Okay, so again, I'm going to rerun the entire thing to ensure that this high level logic is working first. Okay, so again, onboarding scene is true. That means that we no longer need to bring the user to the onboarding screen, but to the main app itself. Okay, so let me just quickly run this one more time, and we should transit the user at the start to the main part of the app, which is correct. Okay, so let's set this to be false, and then now if I'm to run the simulator, we should go to the onboarding screen. Okay, because its onboarding scene is false. Okay, so we want to show this to him. All right, guys, so this is high level logic. The next thing we want to do is that we need to persist the state. That means that when the user loads the app, we want to be able to remember this, okay? Because currently what we are doing right now is just hard coding this, and of course this is not going to work in a production scenario. So the way we can remember this flag, or rather this state, is to store it inside the app, okay? So the way I'm going to suggest that we can do it is to create some kind of storage manager. Okay, so let's come over to service, come under new file, let's select a Swift file, and then let's call this maybe a storage manager. Okay, so let's hit the enter button. Okay, so guys, I'm going to create a class over here called storage manager, And then over here, I'm going to use something called user defaults. Okay, so user defaults is a way to store data into the local app itself. Okay, so it's not a remote storage. Remote means connect to a database, but this one is going to be something like an offline storage. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let me just quickly look at my reference. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's create a key over here. So enum. Okay, guys, before I do the enum, maybe I'll show it to you the bread and butter way first, and then we can optimize this. Okay, so I'm going to do func is onboarding scene. Okay, so let's create this function. So every time we call this function is going to return us a boolean. So this is either true or false. And how are we going to get this information? We're going to get this from the user defaults. Okay, so user defaults.standard, and then you realize when I do a dot, I can get this information. I can select the type of information that I want to get. So I want to get maybe a boolean. So let's select this one over here. So guys, again, if you're unfamiliar with user defaults, just maybe do a search on YouTube. User defaults should be pretty easy to understand. Okay, it's basically something like a storage manager that is created by Swift. Okay, so let's select a boolean. Okay, for key, so we have to define some kind of key over here. All right, so as you know, when we store things into our app, we have to create a key to identify what we are storing, or rather, like, you know, when you create a dictionary, the dictionary will have a key and a value. All right, like a key value pair. So maybe I want to call this let's call this onboarding scene. Okay, onboarding scene, not screen, scene. Okay, so the problem is that, you know, when we do a code like that, we're going to create an error. You know, if let's say we type in this incorrectly. So what I'd like to propose that we can do is that we can create some kind of key over here. So this is an enum, and then for the case, I'm going to call this onboarding scene. Alright, so instead of having these codes over here which is prone to error, so maybe what I like to do is to just reference this key over here. So what this also means is that we can also have different things over here, like, oh, is user, is animation shown, you know, you can add any cases over here to check against. Okay, is card version 2, for example, something like that. Okay, so I'm just going to stick with onboarding scene. So I'm going to do key dot onboarding scene dot raw value. All right, so what is raw value? So raw value will basically transit this into a string instead. Okay, so you notice that if I don't do raw value, you see key dot onboarding scene, this still returns the enum itself. Okay, but when we do dot raw value, notice that this is of type string. Okay, so basically we need to pass a string over here. So okay, so when we call this the is onboarding scene, we are asking user defaults to say that, hey, user defaults, go into the app and look under this key and let's see what is the boolean value that's returned to us. So of course we have not set any boolean value yet, and therefore this will definitely be false. Okay, so we're going to create another function over here that says set onboarding scene. Okay, so we're going to set the flag over here. So we're going to do user defaults dot standard dot set. Okay, so you notice that when we call the set function, there are different functions we can use. So we want to call the boolean one over here because we are only interested in true or false. We don't need to have a float, an integer, or any kind of string over here. All right, so let's set this one over here. And then when we want to set this onboarding scene, of course, we're setting this to be true. All right, so again, for the key, we're going to use this key over here. Okay, again, since we are on this page, let's also create another function called reset onboarding scene. Okay, so why do we want to create this function is because we want to use this to do some testing, because, you know, when we run our app on the simulator, the moment we set the onboarding scene flag to be true, we might want to find a way to just reset this so that we can test this subsequently. All right, so we are creating this function over here. So I'm just going to copy the entire line 22 over here and just paste this inside here and set this to be false. Okay, all right, guys, so if you are still confused what this is about, don't worry. I think in a couple of minutes it should be a little more clear to you. Okay, so now I want to come back to the loading view controller. So now instead of hard coding this to be false, I'm going to say that, hey, this is of type boolean, and I'm going to do an exclamation mark over here. So what this means is that I have to definitely unwrap this, otherwise I'm going to get an error. Okay, so notice that if I'm to run this right now, this is going to crash. Okay, oops, what's wrong here? Okay, I have to make this a var instead. Okay, so let's try that again. So if I'm to run the app right now, it's definitely going to crash, although it says build succeeded. Okay, and the reason is because when we try to read this property over here, there is no value, it's nil, and therefore it crashes. So what we need to do is that under the view.load, we need to assign the value to this. Okay, so let's create the storage manager here, storage manager equals to storage manager. So let's initialize this, and I'm going to say is onboarding scene equals to storage manager dot is onboarding scene. All right, so what this means is that when the view loads, we are going to call storage manager, which is this guy over here, and says, hey, storage manager, please tell me whether this key, can you return to me the boolean value of this key, whether is it true or false. All right, so obviously at the start it's going to be false, okay, because we have not gone to the onboarding screen yet. All right, so let me just quickly run this, and I believe this should be false, and therefore we should see the onboarding screen. All right, so this is how it works. Okay, so what I want to do right now is that let's come over to the onboarding view controller, and under the view.load, okay, maybe let's call let's create the storage manager at the top. So maybe over here, let's do private let storage manager equals to storage manager. Let's initialize this, and then maybe let's call this update flag, update flag. Okay, so let's create a private function here, update flag. And then I'm going to say that, hey, once the view loads, we're going to call storage manager to say, hey, let's set onboarding scene. Okay, so what this does is that we're going to set true to this particular key. All right, so let me just quickly show it to you how this is going to work. So if I'm going to run this right now, because the onboarding scene is false, we will be shown the onboarding screen. Okay, so let me click on this, and we should transit to the onboarding screen itself. Okay, when the onboarding screen is now loaded, this part of the app, which is line 34, is being caught, and therefore if I'm to run the app one more time, even without clicking on this explore button, okay, if I'm to run the app one more time, I will not see this onboarding screen anymore because I've already set this to be true. Okay, so let me rerun this one more time, and let's open the simulator, and notice that we go straight into the main part of the app. All right, Michael, so I hope that this tutorial should help you. Okay, and another thing that I like to do is that I noticed that over here we are repeating code again. So what I like to do is to just fix this. So again, let's come all the way to the top, and let's create private let navigation manager equals to navigation manager. Let's initialize this, and then instead of having this repeated code show main app, what I like to do is maybe let's just kill the entire thing over here. Okay, and then under the did explore button, let's call navigation manager dot show, and then I want to go to the main app in controller. Let's put this to be self. All right, guys, so again, if I want to test this out, I will have a little problem. Okay, if let's say I want to test whether this is working, because I won't be able to go back to the onboarding screen no matter how many times I hit the play button. All right, so the only way you can fix this is either to delete the entire app on your simulator, or what I'll propose is that we can reset this. Okay, that's the reason why I created this reset onboarding scene, and the place you can do that is probably in the app delegate if you want to, and I suggest that we can do it over here. So let's do private let navigate, is it navigation? No, storage manager equals to storage manager, and then let's call this under the did finish launching options. Let's call this dot reset onboarding scene. Okay, so by calling this function, we are actually setting it to be false, and therefore we will go to the onboarding screen itself. Okay, so let's see if this is working. So let me just quickly run this. Alright, so as you can see, right now we are on the onboarding screen itself. So once this is done, just make sure that you delete this. Otherwise, every time the code runs, you're going to end up on the onboarding screen itself. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly remove this. Okay, and then I'm going to come back to the explore button, and when I click on this, I should transit to the main part of the app. Why? Because I've refactored this part, to call the navigation manager to show the main app instead. Okay, so let's come back to the simulator, and let's click on the explore button, and notice that we go back to the main part of the app. All right, guys, I think that's all I have for you in this video, and Michael, I hope that this helps, and I look forward to your review. Thanks. Cheers.